What's up? It's your boy Carcino once again, and let's go through it. Many people talk about the Michael Jordan situation with the gambling, and we've already covered that. I'm kind of glad that the rumor was put to rest on the show because I was always I was always disturbed. You know, I was always disturbed by the lie. As much as I didn't like Michael Jordan, I knew that wasn't true. And I knew that was kind of low down to blame Michael Jordan's gambling on his father's death. When it was clearly no evidence whatsoever leading into that it was a complete witch hunt by the sports media who he had shunned it and wasn't speaking to because he went total radio silence during the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals. He did not want to speak to the media at all and totally blanked them out because they were trying to dig into his life to find things because of this golfing bet with the Gator that he owed Michael Jordan some money, and then they decided to start digging and creating stories. It's more like what people do now on social media or sports media today. You see on the show, they'll take a tagline or something and use it every single day. How many times have we seen Jordan versus LeBron comparisons? We've seen it for 5 weeks straight since they first aired The Last Dance, right? And ever since then, we're like, okay, I guess this is the way it is. Now, to be fair, back then, everything was done via newspaper. The newspaper was God back then because there was no internet. People got and believed what they read. So, what you read, that was the story. That was what was happening. That was it. So no matter what fascination you can come up with, it became reality. Now, when you start thinking about who were the ones to make things happen or to push things along, you start looking at situations and you start saying to yourself, oh man, I don't know what we're going to do here. This is what it looks like today. Might be a little different tomorrow. I don't really know. Then you read the story and it don't make sense. And things are not adding up because you're reading the stories and it's all about Michael Jordan's gambling. His father dies. It's not about the investigation. It's about Michael Jordan's gambling. Then Michael retires from basketball. Michael retired because of gambling. Because it was too soon for them in the sports media is why. Why? Because Michael hadn't been defeated. And in the sports world, that was like the rites of passage. Michael Jordan, or whoever was the team on top, they passed the baton down. And the baton wasn't passed. So the sports media was like served a curveball. Now they don't care who wins the NBA championships. They just automatically is like, well, now the Knicks is gonna be the team. Pat Riley and the Knicks. So it was all designed for them to just rally behind the Knicks. And then when the Rockets won, it just threw a monkey wrench into the whole system. And the sports writers were angry. They need their next topic. So the topic is Michael Jordan's connection with his father's death. He couldn't even mourn at his funeral for his father. They're asking him about the death and his gambling. I mean, the balls to do that when they're asking for respect and all of these things. Michael is standing there, and someone actually had the balls to ask him, did his gambling have anything to do with his father's death? Like, Michael Jordan was making probably 3 times the amount of money just from Nike alone. There's not a bet he could have made that would have put him in the poorhouse that much that his father's life would have to be taken because of it. It's dumb. And with the FBI and everyone else involved, they would have uncovered all of this. So the NBA, the National Basketball Association, is going to do an investigation into the Michael Jordan gambling. So once that was announced that they were going to definitely, look into it, you might as well say they was putting Michael Jordan on trial. They did their own internal investigation, and it was based on the facts of what they had from the information from the FBI and the interview with Michael. It lasted about a day, to be honest, and the investigation was over. There was, and I repeat, was no connection with Michael Jordan's gambling and his father's death. And anybody who believed it for all of these years, they believed it, and I can't blame them for it because you had very compelling articles that were written. Lorraine Adams from the Washington Post, her article was everywhere. Her storyline was everywhere. And people gravitated to the fact of Michael Jordan's gambling and the connections. And then they did it in a way where they wouldn't accuse that of being the reason, but they're insinuating it and they're bringing it to the forefront in the story so that you would definitely attach yourself. Jay Mariotti, who basically hated Jordan and the Bulls. Whenever Jay Mariotti wrote, he was like Whitlock or Skip Bayless at the time. Bayless came in 98 after he got ran out of Dallas. This was the next thing, being controversial with Michael. And everyone there knew one thing. This was about to implode. Michael Jordan and all the people that were looking into him, why weren't they looking into James Jordan? You see, if you want to really go back to history with Michael's gambling, it goes back to when Michael was a child. And seeing his father with a stogie, drinking some yak, playing cards with some family members and some of the neighbors. So that's where he used to, watch his dad. He'd come up to the table He'll tell Michael, "Hey, bring me my glasses, or bring me this," and Michael just wanted to be around his father. So that was always interesting to him. Now, these sports writers didn't go back to do all these things, to talk about the history of Michael's gambling and where it came from, and sat down there. They never really got how Michael basically is emulating what his father does and what his father did. Remember, his father took him to Atlantic City during the Knicks series because the media kept calling him and harassing him and staying on his back. He just wanted to get away from it all. So he went total media silence. That pissed him off. And back then, the media were gods. They controlled everything. The players didn't have control over the media. Guys like Lacey Banks, who were Michael Jordan's public writers and kiss up guys, he told them, "Yeah, I would love to talk to you, but I can't, Lacey. You know, these situations, I just can't break rank." And when he did do an interview, he did it with his buddy Ahmad Rashad. Ahmad would get the exclusive. That's why Ahmad was able to keep his NBC job when he was accused of womanizing by a woman who was there. They only would let Ahmad do special reports at the time. It's a lot of stuff that was going on. But James Jordan was his own man. He did things and moved on his own terms. What's shocking to me is that while the sports world is painting this story about Jordan, and who was earning in 1993 $35 million a year. In 1993, Michael Jordan's earning $35 million a year. Okay? And this is in 93. And that's based off the Jordan sales. Majority of that is Nike. But he's earning $30 plus million a year. So let that sink in when people talk about him gambling debts. There ain't enough gambling for Michael Jordan to do to where he's going to owe some mobster $35 million. No. They were covering up the fact James Jordan, who was always had women on the side, was back out doing his thing with his woman that he normally messes around with. James Jordan and his mom, Dolores, they have been separated for years. They only come out for public appearances for Michael's sake, but they've been split up. The media skipped all of that because they were protecting the public image. That's why it took 3 weeks before people was like, "Hey, we never heard from, like, he never been gone 3 weeks," and they were so late in getting people to look for him, because in their mind he does this all the time. So there's no need to get alarmed and start turning over tables and things of this nature. He disappears, but they should have known something's wrong immediately when he didn't show up for an engagement Michael was supposed to have, and then there's no call, no nothing. James Jordan, you know used to do certain things. People thought he was kidnapped for money, but nobody ever called to ask for a ransom. So it doesn't make sense. But James Jordan, you know, often did a little substance at the time. they covered that up. He wasn't an addict or anything. He just had his vices. You see, these are things that they never really told people. All right. Now, once this whole thing went down and the Slim Boulder thing blew over, and everything's about, I'm like, they can't even connect Slim Boulder to Jordan's father at all. I mean, none of it makes any sense. Slim Boulder don't know who James Jordan is only by the word of mouth. They never went into his past. They never went into South Carolina, North Carolina. you know, this is like the areas where they're from. And you got to really dig deep to get stuff out of there because it's like James Jordan was no high profile guy. He was in the dirt roads and things of that nature. But when Michael Jordan went to North Carolina and was down there playing, there was an investigation done into James Jordan when he worked at General Electric at the plant. That's correct. There was an investigation and he was found guilty. Nobody really knows about that. James Jordan moved from Wilmington, North Carolina, and he moved after he pled guilty in 1985 because he took money from a private contractor when he was in charge of inventory at the General Electric plant. He took a kickback of about $7,000. So he got a 3-year suspended sentence for 5 years. And he was placed on a supervised probation for like 5 years. Then he had to pay $1,000 fine. So they went to, I think they moved over to the Goose Creek community. So they moved way out. They moved out near the farm area near Mint Hill, North Carolina. And when you in Mint Hill, North Carolina, it's like privacy. You want to be private. So they both basically got out of Dodge because everybody's going to find out what happened. And Jordan basically made him retire and just like, look, you can start your own business and do this and that. You ain't got to work for anybody anymore. Michael then made it. So a lot of things came around, but the writers kept this lie going. And this is just to let you guys know that when the media don't like you or they need you to be the villain, they'll make you the villain. I don't like you. You're the villain now. This was the narratives. Now you never hear anybody bring this up about Jordan's dad now because it don't fit their narrative. Now they're at the mercy of the athlete, the star, the entertainer. There's no investigations into anything anymore. See, back then you had Rick Tellinger, who basically, and Rick was always fair. I'll give Rick that. Rick Tellinger was always fair, but he really got hammered over over the Michael Jordan baseball, and I don't even think he wrote the article just because he worked for Sports Illustrated. Michael Jordan wouldn't speak to him anymore. So he ended up leaving Sports Illustrated and taking a job with the Sun Times. Now, Rick was always one of those guys who was, pro Michael and just giving it to it straight, where you had Gleason and what's his name, Bill Gloss, he just retired. These guys were the old Chicago writers. They used to have a TV show. It might be on YouTube called The Sports Writers. All you got to do is listen to one episode of that. They smoked stogies at a round table all day. And Rick was the baby out of all of them there. He's like the young guy, and they just basically treat him like a tool on the show. Well, you see the mindset of the sports writers. They're like all elitists, and they're all trying to correct each other's grammars, punctuations, all in conversation. Nothing was good enough unless it came from them. So you get to see that behavior and pattern a lot. So David Stern didn't give it an ounce of attention. And it's common sense. And it was just like it was in The Last Dance. Common sense. Do you think David Stern would suspend his top earning basketball player in the world for over a year for gambling? Are you stoned? This ain't the Major League Baseball. This is the NBA. This guy, Pete Rose, wasn't even the top earning baseball player. He was a manager at that time. They didn't give a damn about what Pete Rose is doing. Michael Jordan could have bet on every team in the league. They'd have made him pay a fine, say he's sorry. Michael's going to miss 3 games. No damn way were they going to kick Michael Jordan out of basketball. Are you stoned? I'm like, but people believed it because it was written. And more than one person was writing it. So if more than one person is writing it, they're trying to make it a reality. So when you're trying to make something a reality, these are the steps that are taken when you're falsifying reality. Now, of course, they recovered and recouped because they've all found new avenues that everybody always do. They scatter like roaches and find ways to get around. But now the media is dead. Everybody is so connected to, I got to kiss up to this guy. I got to do this to stay in this business. It's ridiculous when you don't have to do that. And now, because of the pandemic, you see everybody's doing that now. Now they're saying the Skip Bayless route, or the what's the name, Jason Whitlock. They can be controversial. They can be not attached to the sports media. It's everybody's opinion that matters now. YouTube, everybody's a sports columnist. So that's the new reality. And thank you guys for donating to the Cash App. I appreciate it. I mean, you guys, Streamlab too. You guys have been holding it down. I will allude, J-Biz, all of you guys, man. And don't forget, if you're, even if you caught this video, check and make sure your subscription says selected to all for notifications. Because sometimes, I don't know why this is even a thing, they unsubscribe people from the channel. Yep. It's a whole lot of craziness going on, right? So if that happens, definitely check your systems out and make sure things are working properly. And I'm gone. Love, peace, and hair grease. And the Patreon's on fire.